Hi, I'm Frank Tybush, the creative director for Tonal Vision. Today, I'm talking about the Sony NEX-FS700. We have another video that's about the general setup, but today's video is just about the slow motion function of the camera and what you have to do to make it work. There's two ways of getting to the slow motion function. The first, the easy way, is this S and Q button, which is slow and quick. You can press that and it will bring up a menu. So if you press it once, you'll actually get a time-lapse function, which I'm not talking about today. Press it a second time and we'll bring you to the super slow motion function. What you want to do is set all of your functions. You want to set the ISO, the shutter speed, focus. All of it is manual only. You cannot have auto. And with that, there is no audio. So you don't have to worry about that, but it's something to keep in mind. If you really want to capture audio, you need an external recorder. At this point, the only setting you can change is the frames per second. If you want to be able to change other functions, you have to go in another way. You press the menu button and you go to camera set, scroll down, and you have slow and quick. Click into that and you can change the settings. Now, with the camera out of the box as it is, you can only shoot 120, 240 without a loss of quality. And then you can shoot 480 and 960, but there's a loss of quality with those. And with all the settings, you have a finite amount of time that you can film. You can get an external recorder and actually upgrade it to be able to shoot 120 or 240 in 4K for extended periods of time. But because we don't have that, we're just going to talk about the shortened period of time. In this menu, you scroll down to super slow motion and it'll bring another menu open. There's the record format, there's the frame rate, and the record timing. Let's first talk about frame rate. As I said, you can do 120, 240, 480, or 960. With these, 120 and 240, there is zero loss in quality. At 480, there's a bit of a loss of quality. And at 960, there's a large loss of quality. I really don't suggest going up to 960. You actually lose part of the frame. It looks nifty seeing something that slow, but for usable footage, it's really not that usable. 480 is pushing it, but we've used it before and it actually looks nice in the right setting. With choosing the frame rate, there's some things you need to keep in mind. First off, you only get an allotted amount of seconds depending on the frame per second. So if you're shooting with 120 frames per second, you get only 16 seconds of footage. But when you put this in the computer, it ends up expanding to about 63 seconds of computer time. With 240 frames per second, you only get 8 seconds of recording time. And this also expands to only 63 seconds. With 480 frames per second, you get a maximum of 10 seconds to record. That expands to 2 minutes 35 seconds when put into the computer. Now 960, you get 19 seconds to record with, and that expands to 10 minutes 5 seconds. But again, it's such a large loss of quality, you really don't want to use this often. You choose what frame per second you want. You hit enter. The next is record timing. You can either do start trigger, end trigger, or end trigger half. So let's talk about start trigger first. Something to keep in mind. There is a lag between when you hit record and when it actually starts recording. And it changes depending on the frame per second. For 120 frames per second, it's 2.3 seconds. For 240 frames per second, it's 1.4 seconds. 480, it's 1.5 seconds. And for 960, it's 2.6 seconds. So when I'm doing the start trigger, I will actually have a stopwatch with me. And I will, when I hit record, I'll press the stopwatch. And depending on the frames per second, when it gets to the lag time up, then I'll go action. The other nice thing about start trigger is that you can choose when it stops. You can either go to the maximum allotted time, or you can stop it ahead of time. And this is really handy for saving time. With start trigger, you press the start button and it will start recording at that time. This is perfect if you can control the function that's going on. If you know you're dropping a ball or you're making something explode, this is perfect because you know when it's going to happen. But it's not great if you're shooting a sports event, a dance, where you're waiting for the perfect thing to happen and then you want to capture it. With that, you'd want to use end trigger. And what happens is the camera will actually buffer for the maximum amount of time that is allotted for the frames per second that you choose. And then when you see the action happen and it's over, you press the button and it will take that time that it buffered and save that time. When you choose end trigger, an interesting thing will happen. You see it saying preparing. What that's doing is that's buffering for the maximum allotted time. So because this is 120, it's going to do it for 16 seconds. And what you're actually going to see is that all this movement that I'm making has been pre-captured. So when you hit the start, it actually stops it and takes it back to that maximum allotted time. And you'll notice it says recording, but really it's going through that buffering. And you're actually seeing a preview of what your slow motion is going to be. End trigger half is exactly the same, only it will only buffer half the time. So there's a lot you can do and a lot of features with the slow motion. Here, why don't you take a look?
Let your team see the ball in slow motion. Give SNI a call and start hitting home runs.
I hope this video has made you excited to shoot and use the slow motion function with this camera. Thank you for watching.